So with multiple representations in math, I find that quite often when people think of math, they do think of the abstract. And that's it. The numbers, the equation, the steps, and we're done. But there is, again, if we're talking about equitable learning environments, we're trying to reach most students, all students. We're trying to reach as many students as possible when we're giving this information. And one way to do that in math is to be intentional about showing multiple representations when you're teaching. So you're not just giving, just notes, abstract notes on the board, and here are the steps, now go do it. You want to make sure that you're representing things in different ways for those students that may need various stages of that representation before they can get the actual abstract concept. So what does multiple representations look like for you?
Multiple representations in my classroom look exactly what you were saying. Yes, it may be some concrete examples. There may be some representational examples of how can you represent it, as well as abstract. Of course, when you get to high school, everything is abstract. Mm-hmm. So I found my biggest challenge trying to be able to go from abstract to where I see in middle school, especially in the early stages, like 6th grade, everything is how do you represent it to the abstract? That was a whole challenge. Hence, when I said earlier, I did not like teaching elementary school math because in the early stages of elementary, everything is concrete. And I was like, how do you not already get this? Mm-hmm. So, but concrete is fun, but it also takes a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And so I was just like, I don't really like this, but I can't give up, because even though I have high school students, guess what? Every single student is not at the same level. So sometimes I still may have to bring out some concrete examples. Right. I might need to, if I have some toothpicks in my classroom, I might have to use some toothpicks to show them how I accumulated something. Or if I have some yarn or some string and they don't understand what addition means, I may pick up two things really quick and show them concrete. Just as well as when you get to the representational stage, some students are stuck at the representation. That's completely fine with me, because if you know how to represent something, or you know how to draw something on paper, I don't care if you're on that SOL and you just can't do the abstract part, because the SOL is not timed. So if it takes you for every single 40 problems that you have and you are better at representing it, that's telling me you're probably a better visual learner. And that's how you learn. So hence why giving those choices of assignments fit better for all students, because you're making it more equitable. As well as then, like I said, the abstract piece. Well, once they get to the abstract stage, it's really nothing much more after that, besides the fact that do you know how to communicate or derive to get to that answer? That you know the procedure to get to that answer. So in using the concrete representation in abstract, I have used anchor charts to represent all three areas of those things, because of course an anchor chart is a visual, but for the student, they may need to see it this way, or this way at the different stages. There probably is a little piece of each. So I'll leave those visuals hanging up on the wall for the whole unit. They might compile, because I have had, there have been instances where you walk into my classroom, there's so many anchor charts hanging up, it looks like a fire hazard. So I would not recommend for the fire marshal to come in. So if you want to get anchor charts, I recommend you getting the ones that do peel and stick on the wall. So that way you can just kind of keep peeling, sticking them and flipping them as you need them. And they kind of compile like a book. But I find them to be very useful. And then I also use every single year word wall cards or metacognitive strategies, where we have created an acronym. One that I particularly love to use is called CUBES. But I have a lot of acronyms and a lot of vocabulary words written all over the place, whether it's on anchor charts, their cards, laminated, hung up. They have created them themselves around the classroom, because it's a visual reminder for them to use the vocabulary the correct way when they are showing me how they may represent a problem, or if they need to talk about the problem. That's what I would say pretty much about as far as making sure I have multiple representations in my classroom. But I do make sure I incorporate a lot of student created things, because again, I'm not an expert at one thing. I'm an expert at abstract before I'm an expert at anything else. If I have a student who's mastered whatever that problem is, abstract in abstract form, they've mastered how to represent that, I might take their example and display it really big in the classroom somewhere. So other kids can get that same feel. It's not about being an expert.
And that's what I find we tend to gravitate towards teaching the way that we learn, regardless of what our actual education has been on teaching. We do tend to gravitate towards teaching how we learned. And there are lots of us out there, me included, that did not learn concretely. A lot of the concepts, like you got to abstract. And so it does make it more of a challenge to be intentional about those areas, because again, they're not necessarily where we're comfortable. So I really appreciate you being very open about that for yourself, but also following it with, it's not that you abandon concrete and representational, but just because you're more comfortable with abstract, you just have to do a little bit more work behind the scenes to make sure you can give your students a concrete and a representational approach to a problem or to a concept, and not just the abstract. And so I love that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of teachers need to hear that. It's not just going to always come natural to everyone. And it's okay to not be an expert in it, as long as you're working towards a little bit here and there of trying to become better with that.